Well, hello everybody. We are back live again today, and we have a full house. I'm Jessica O'Neill from Pet Intel. You guys want to jump in there?
And I'm Natasha from Coyote Canine Dog Training.
Jay.
I'm Jay with Coyote Canine.
I'm Nicole Lapratte-Patry from Pet Intel Behaviour Centre.
So we are trying to bring to you some other faces and people who are experts in different fields. And today we have an interesting topic on the table. And Nicole has a vast amount of knowledge in this arena. So today's topic is children and dogs. And we all have a lot of opinions about this, and we all have a lot of personal experience with this, probably. I know, Tash, you certainly do.
Brand new.
Tash, you have a 7 months old, you said?
I have a 7-month-old now, yeah. He just turned 7 months.
Okay. And my house is full of teenagers, so it's a little bit different now, but still, I've been through the ringer myself, and there's so many different things in this area that we can discuss. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the video. I'm going to start playing the video here for you guys, and we're going to turn it right down. But I'm going to play the video here so you guys can sort of see the types of things that we wanted to talk about. So just to get started, this video was labeled cutest moments of children and dogs, I think, right?
Yeah, it was something like that.
Something like cutest moments. And I think we all kind of had many moments where we did a lot of gasping.
I actually haven't seen this video.
Okay, Jay hasn't seen the video.
I didn't watch it actually, so this is new and already alarming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cutest moments that aren't so cute.
That's right. So I think there's a lot to discuss here, so we should probably jump in with what we're looking at here is the babies, and we'll be able to talk a little bit about, there are many other ages and obviously developmental skills that we'll get into as well for children, but just starting with babies a little bit here. Nicole, maybe you can give us...
I actually cannot see the video.
The video is playing on the live stream, so you'll have to watch it a little bit on your...
Okay, got it. Yep.
So just starting with the topic of babies and dogs, is there something that people can do to prepare? Do you think that people can do to prepare for a baby coming into a house where there's already a dog?
Yes, actually. Whenever the dog is coming, well, it depends, right? If the baby's coming in and the dog was already there, or so this is what we're talking about. The baby's already there, and the dog's already there, and the baby comes in the picture, right?
Yes. So how do we all sort of work with our clients when they're saying, I got a baby on the way?
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, you would take out some of the baby's clothing or some of the belongings that would be the baby's, and you would allow the dog to get familiar with them. Now, if the dog is allowed on the sofa, let's say you've always allowed your dog to be with you on the sofa. And then the baby comes along, and then you decide that no, you don't want that dog anywhere near the baby, which means that very often you will also be asking the dog to be away from you, right? So if you're avoiding having the dog and the baby meet, that will give a very negative message to the dog, who can then perceive that there's something wrong with this little new being that's come in the house. And it also makes a lot of sounds, different sounds. It flails its arms about. It's all very disconcerting for a dog that has never been subjected or socialized to that. So there's socializing to be done for sure. Some will even take just a baby, a doll, wrap it up, and pretend to be walking around with a baby. That's another way, and you counter condition at the same time, and you can get the dog used to seeing you carry things. So you really have to think of what you want your dog to be able to do with the baby, how much interaction you wish them to have together, and that has to be decided prior to, and then you need to get that dog ready for whatever you will decision you will have made for when the baby's there.
Yeah, I'm not sure about you, Tash and Jay, but I know for myself, I've definitely had a lot of clients come to me who are expecting, and so I think that's something. I think people think about that a little bit. They're like, okay, this is going to be a little bit different. And one thing that you said, Nicole, that really rings true to me is making sure that it's already going to be life-changing having another dynamic in the house. But then if you're also changing their routine and the rules.
Everything. Yeah.
Right?
And just go ahead, Jay.
Sorry. Somebody has their sound on in a separate, on another device, I think.
Sorry, could be me. No.
So if we can turn the sound down on the second device, we won't get the feedback or the reverberation there. Okay, sorry. It was driving me absolutely crazy.
No, that's okay.
You've got their damn sound on.
We've got a lot of devices on the go right now, I think.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, she was saying that if the routine is going to be so different with the new baby added on. I mean, it just changes our whole lives upside down. You're up at night, and during the day you're trying to nap. So all of that is very, very different to the dog. And yeah, they are loyal, and yes, they do adapt. But you have to be reasonable, and also essentially trying to figure out what kind of dog you have. Is it a dog that will just adapt very easily? Is it a dog that you'll have to put a lot of work in before the baby comes? So that he doesn't react adversely towards the baby. So there's a lot to think of. Is this an older dog? Is this a dog that was your baby before the real baby came along, right? So there's a lot of thought that needs to be put in that portion of putting a baby and a dog together. And unfortunately, not many people, I'll say that many people do not put much thought in it because they have this preconceived notion that dogs and babies and dogs and children just automatically get along well. You put them together and magic happens, like in a Walt Disney film, where you just put them together and somehow they understand each other, they can cohabitate, live together, and everything's beautiful.
Yeah, the one thing is the confinement part of it too. So like we know that in order to ensure safety, a lot of the time management is pretty essential. And a lot of individuals have dogs, like especially if they've been living them for a long time, they have dogs that don't know how to be crated. They don't know how to be on their own. They don't know how to be behind a gate. They don't know how to be separated from the nucleus. And
exactly.
And when you have that, adding on top of everything else, now you're asking the dog to adjust to learning these new skills at a time where things are already very different.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, go ahead, Jay. Go ahead, Tash.
I was just going to say from me, and as I'm going through it right now, as I just went through it, I've had 7 months there. One of the things you touched on was dynamics, right? So one thing to remember is you don't want to be changing dynamics as the baby's coming into the picture. So routine dynamics, my dogs, they were getting used to the new routine. They were getting used to the dynamics prior to the baby even coming into the house. So I started, I was probably 3-4 months pregnant when I started. Okay, you guys are going to have to be by yourselves at times when, baby's spending time with the baby. They're in, I'm lucky because I have my house set up that I have a dog room that they have their own space, so baby's not down there anyways. But that's, routine and changing. Exercise isn't going to be the same. This kind of stuff's not going to be the same. So I said, we're doing it right now. Dynamics are happening. So when baby came into the picture, it wasn't different. Right? The dynamics were already set in place. The routines were already set in place, so they weren't missing. They weren't missing the extra exercise.
And the attention, not just exercise, but also like attention and interaction and all those things, right?
You actually did them a great favor, right? It was a great favor.
There's two situations that I think present themselves to people, and one is the dog is already there and we're bringing a baby into the equation, and the second is that the baby's already there and we're bringing a dog into the equation. The former I think is a little bit more difficult than the latter. Meaning, I think it's harder to bring a baby into the equation when the dog's already there than to bring a dog into the equation when the baby's already there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So we're understanding we either have a dog there first or we have a baby there first. And the way I think people go about that is there's some subtle nuances that are important there. The dog is there first. I mean, like Tash said, I think it's important to set parameters. Jess, we touched on some, permissible behaviors. Who's controlling the space? Who's giving permission to do what? And that sort of thing. Just setting some, I think, structure, parameters, expectations, I think, are important too. And that stuff needs to happen as soon as the person finds out they're pregnant. And whether they're in the first trimester or later on, for me, it doesn't matter. Those things, that structure, that dynamic, the relationship is going to change. And it's the dog who's going to be on the losing end. Because at the end of the day, it's the dog. I mean, look, you've got a baby. I've been there. I haven't had a baby, but I'm a dad, so I mean, I can understand that. Sleep deprivation is high, and so you've got a sleep-deprived mom or dad or both, or whatever the relational dynamic is there. And sleep deprivation, for me, equates to emotions go up, intellect goes down, and so we start having these issues where the dog's not getting the attention that it did. There's something new into the equation that it has no idea what is. And now we have a frustrated, sleep-deprived, short-fused owner who's more than likely going to, if something's going to be a whipping boy, it's going to be the dog. And that's just the way the way it is. And so there's so many things there. So for me, what's important from the get-go, when these people even understand, or even if it's a P-test, for me, it's like day one, you are starting and you've got 8 months. If your morning sickness isn't horrible or whatever other sicknesses are coming in the equation, a normal pregnancy, let's say, you've got about 8.5 months, because 8.5 months to 9 months, it's too risky. The baby could come at 8.5 months, like it can come at months, or it could come at 9.5 months. I don't know, but you start immediately with putting structure and routine and dynamic changes right away, so that one, the dog has time to adapt to the new you, and the new behavior and the new rules of the house, if you will. And then second, when the baby does come, like Tash said, there are no big changes, and you're helping yourself, or whoever's looking after the baby, or the couple is helping themselves to be able to deal with the situation of having the existing dog there, who, in my opinion, I believe that dogs have the emotional capacity to be jealous and to want. And so if I think the dog will feel some withdrawal and maybe some not being included in the equation quite as much. And so those little things there are important. And that's before you bring the baby home. We're not even talking baby smell yet. We're not talking intro. We're not talking talking any of that. So no. So a good cue for me, you find out you're pregnant, I'd be on the phone with somebody who's like, hey, you got a baby, yeah? Well, how about you come over to my house? Because I want to know how that dog's going to respond to your crying baby. and I better
Yeah.
be able to, like,
Oh,
I better be
boy.
putting something in place.
Sorry, guys.
So
Yeah, and the sooner the better. I agree, Jay. That the sooner that you can get this on the go and start working on it, the prep. I'm going to call it the preparation stage.
Yeah.
The sooner the better. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I agree.
yeah, and so whether that means starting to crate train your dog if it's not crate trained, or if your dog wasn't a crate, you start reintroducing that crate.
Mhm.
And if that's proving to be difficult, reach out to somebody, one of us, and we can help you with that.
Absolutely.
And just putting all those things that sort of you thought you were done with, put those things back in place, because guaranteed there is nobody on the planet that can be on baby duty and dog duty at the same time.
Yeah.
Just not happening. And so,
No.
and you, I don't care how many adults are in the house, nobody can be on duty, watching, being mindful of, supervising what's going on. And so your crate is going to be your good friend, and probably your dog's good friend, because if it's done right, that's a safe place.
Yeah, and a crate, and I would even enlarge that a little. The crate or gates, or it could be also what I call management stations. It could be, an enclosure, like whatever. And I also recommend that there's more than one alternative to putting the dog away when you really cannot give it the attention it deserves. And I call them success stations, where at least if the dog is there, he's not underfoot. But of course, if you do not get that dog ready for that, he's going to retaliate in one way or another. His behavior will show you that he is not dealing with that very nicely or very kindly. And it's actually when the dog is older and has never had any restriction put on it because it was the baby, the poor thing doesn't understand what's happening. And then, as you mentioned also, Jay, is that the poor dog comes in and the baby's there, and there's so many restrictions that he had no idea even existed, and all of a sudden they all fall on this poor dog. Like, you can't get close to me, you need to be away, you can't, no, I don't have time to take 3 walks with you a day, right? And then this poor dog pretty soon comes out with behavior issues, of course, just unable to take charge, to control all of the emotions that are inside. And I do agree, they are emotional beings. It's been proved. They are very much, they do feel a lot of emotions. And when you don't deal with those emotions, well, you get what you get. You get a dog with behavior issues.
So there's probably some Jess, you asked what that would look like in terms of preparation, I guess. And there's other super practical things that people can do. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I can remember tons of times when people would call me and say, I'm walking down the street, my dog loses its mind when it sees a baby stroller.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well,
oh yeah.
I mean, you don't have to wait for a baby shower to get a stroller. You can buy a cheap stroller on Kijiji for like $20 or $25, or even if it's $50, it doesn't matter. You introduce the stroller to your dog, and guess what? You start with the dog with the stroller in one hand and the leash in the other, and you get that dog.
Or the hands-free walking is huge too.
And acclimatized to having suddenly a 4-wheeled buggy on it, right?
We have a comment here. I'm going to interrupt for a second. So I have a comment here. So in the video clip, it says, in the video clip, I see recurring themes of placing a dangerous amount of trust in the tolerance of their dogs towards completely oblivious babies. I see the inclusion of food, breaches of spatial barriers, physical gestures, and little to no advocacy by the way of common sense of either the baby or the dog. Both are acting in a very predictable way, but if anything goes wrong on both could suffer injuries and lasting trauma. And I think that that's a fantastic point, because
absolutely,
when we were talking a little bit about advocacy there, Jane's touching on that, and I would say that that's something we talked about before, Nicole, how truly and honestly, in this situation, you're talking about vulnerable individual. The dog will suffer sometimes with their life, sometimes with losing their home, and of course the child could suffer a bite or a scratch or worse. So I think, who's responsible for these interactions, and at the end of the day, the onus does go on to the parents and the dog owners,
Absolutely.
right, to ensure safety first. And so we can look at preparation as far as getting the dog emotionally ready for a little human being in the home, but it's also about setting up, just like you go to the store and you buy, the foam things to go around all your corners, and you move everything up, and you no longer have candles on your coffee table. You also need to prepare management zones and safety zones for your dog, right? And so
safety zone is a big thing, and I tell my clients that your dog needs a safe zone, whether it be behind a baby gate, whether it be a crate, whether it be a bed that's upstairs. They need to know that they have a way to exit if they're feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, and sometimes
totally
we need to
safe and away from. Oh, sorry, Jess.
I was just gonna say, sometimes we need to actually really encourage that, because they may include themselves in a situation, and how often do dogs get themselves stuck in a situation where they don't have an experience, they don't have anything to draw on, and just like Jay says, when those stress levels go up, the intellect goes down. So
and the thing is too, because of what the parent is going through, they will not necessarily notice what the dog is saying. Right? It's totally out of their realm at that moment. They're so taken and centralized on the baby, on the child, and the matter at hand, that unfortunately the dog will be speaking. The dog will be saying, okay, I'm uncomfortable. I'm missing this. My needs, right? The dog will communicate, but unfortunately it will be missed a lot of the time, simply because of the nature of the situation, having a baby or a toddler, and as the child gets older also, you're right, Jess, when you say that parents will expect, let's say that they've had this great dog, he's a good dog, he's trustworthy, loyal, tolerant, and all of a sudden this baby comes and they don't take notice that all his needs are not necessarily met. Not a critical criticism, but it's an observation, right? It's just the way it is. And then as the child gets a bit older, gets crawling, the parents will automatically assume and expect that the dog will continue being that very good dog, that tolerant dog, that despite the whole environment that's changed, they still have the same expectation. And then again, the dog will continue communicating, and if ever, God forbid, that the dog show a snarl or a growl because he is just communicating, saying, hey, I'm very uncomfortable with this, then they start fearing for the baby. Then they shun the dog again even more. So they can get trapped in that vicious cycle very fast. It can happen also very fast within weeks or months, where all of a sudden they say that they don't understand their dog. They don't recognize their dog. So it's it's sometimes difficult to understand what you're going through while you are living it, for all the reasons that Jay explained earlier, that you lack of sleep, lack of routine, adapting to another
hormones.
Yes. And sometimes it's also financial constraint, right? Sometimes you the finances aren't as good because you're at home and staying with your baby. So many reasons will bring you in this situation. But unfortunately, it seems to be the dog that will pay for that.
So can I just mention, you just sort of touched on something there about how the dog all of a sudden will bite, or growl, and we talk a lot on the show about the nuances of behavior, and I think it's really important for people to understand that by the time that the dog has bitten or is growling at the baby or at the child of any age, it's probably tried really hard to communicate to you in
Definitely.
other ways that might be somewhat subtle to 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 a layman, right? That there's other ways that they're communicating. So maybe we can like give a few examples of that and how like I mean this video is a 10-minute video and there's just so many things, but I think we all can imagine what some of these dogs might do when they don't have, we were talking about an escape route or a safe place that they can go to, or they don't know how to ask for that in a
and
way that you can
and
understand.
and actually, when they get to that point, either they get the dogs, because they've been communicating, and the human is not necessarily receptive to the communication at that moment in time or during that period of time. Then the poor dog realizes that, hey, I'm on my own here. I don't know that I can trust these people to keep me safe anymore, right? So then they start acting by their own devices according to how they feel, because they do feel that possibly they're not being understood or listened to, right? So that's another very scary thing for a dog, is to think that, oh, I'm on my own, right? I cannot trust the humans anymore the way I used to.
Well, I think I think it assumes a lot for a dog to. I mean, I know where you're going with that, but I think it assumes a lot that of the dog that is going to lose trust so quickly. I think what happens there, the reality is people don't prep for it. They don't prep the dog for it. And
Absolutely, but it also depends on the dog.
They don't really think it through. And I don't think it's out of a place of malice, like they think, it'll be fine. I think it's kind of oblivious. They're kind of oblivious because the dog is great with them and great with maybe people of their age, or maybe good around young children. But a baby's a different thing. It squeals, it cries, it drives even parents crazy. And so if there's no time for the dog to acclimate, or if the dog hasn't been socialized to noises in general, and I mean noises and fast flailing movements, it could be asking for help in a variety of different ways. At some point, the person might be, through sleep deprivation, not as on point as they normally are, not as astute, and that poses a whole bunch of other problems itself too. But more to the point is that I think what people don't realize is you might have a fantastic dog, and it might be fantastic around kids for an hour or two. But never underestimate that, just like people, dogs have a point of saturation where they're going to not be so patient anymore. And the thing is we can use our words as a warning, and then if that doesn't work, potentially people start to yell and scream a little bit louder, and if that doesn't work, then they come to fisticuffs. Getting in a fight with another human is one thing, but when a dog fights, it uses its teeth, and it punctures. It starts plugging holes and stuff. And so even if the dog has great bite inhibition, which means it knows how to use its mouth, where maybe we're getting a little off topic here, but it might put its hand on you but not bite. Here's an example. Golden Retriever, I have one Retriever, 2 bird dogs. And I assure you that they can easily put their mouth, and they can carry an egg.
Oh, yeah.
Riley can carry an egg. He has a soft mouth, and he's got great bite inhibition. You give that egg to one of my shepherds, they're like chomp, and that thing's dripping out. The bite inhibition isn't quite as soft. But the point is that if that dog reaches a point of saturation where it's like, look, if nobody's advocating for me, if leadership has gone out the window, and I'm taking things into my own hands, and by things I mean, to this dog, it's the whole wide world it's taking into its hands, or at very least the whole inside of the house, because human is not looking after it any longer. Even a little bit of a nip hey, that's baby skin. And there's a reason why people say it's smooth as a baby's butt, because it doesn't have those. It's not like, my hands are like worn leather here. It doesn't have. It takes a lot less, to scrape or to make bleed.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a dog who's already begun to practice a behavior that isn't cool. And also, we seem to be sort of assuming a lot of things, in the sense that right now the video. And I got an eye on the video here, and although we see babies, we're not seeing newborns.
Right.
No.
Well, and I think it starts to become more of a risk as the babies start to have a little bit more of an independent personality.
Yeah.
And then of course the next thing is that these children are going to start moving and traveling around the space. And then you get through like a baby gate or a crate where the child's sticking its fingers in and thinking it's hilarious and stuff like this. So I think it's I understand the point that you're making, but I think back to sort of that advocacy. I mean, you sort of echoed what Nicole was saying also about, the dog really does need to trust, and there will be a breakdown in trust over time if the dog is constantly put in a position to take care of the situation independently.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the dog.
That's exactly what I said when you started talking. It does depend on the dog. Totally depends on the dog, and totally depends on the existing relationship with the owner. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%. So, a good indication of that is if somebody, like, if I'm down for like, I don't get sick very often, touch wood. But if Kim gets sick and she's not feeling well for a week or something like that, and I'm too busy to pick up the slack, I mean, do the dogs get excited? Yeah. Does it kill the relationship? No. I mean,
no, but it's not long term.
Not long term. And at the end of the day,
that's where the
as the baby grows, less and less time, to some degree, is spent on the baby. And meaning this. Meaning, Tash, when you had Dex, you were up like every 2-3 hours feeding, and he was not sleeping the night.
Yeah, every 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah, so you cut out there, and I see you nodding your head, but I assume you were up every few hours feeding him or something like that.
Yeah.
At a certain point in time, he was able to sleep through the night. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, like, when we start, it's baby, dog. But as the baby grows, I think that evens out a little bit more. I mean, yeah, of course, there's still lots of emphasis on the dog, on the
challenges change as the baby grows, becomes a toddler. You're still in front of challenges or adapting the way you arrange the environment according to the needs to keep both safe. You're still adapting the environment, and the challenges just change as the child gets older. And then when they get to be 4 or 5, then they're able to go around. They don't quite understand what respect is towards a dog is. What does it mean to be respectful towards the dog, right? So then you have to change the way you educate the child again. And again, the dog needs to adapt to that child during its development. And then as they get older, you might think of a 12-year-old even, or a 10-year-old that gets a bit rambunctious and wants to wrestle with the dogs. Like it does become easier in some ways, but then you get different layers of difficulty in another way. So you won't need to sleep. Well, you do catch up on sleep a little, but then your child's running around all over, right? So you're having to childproof everything. So it just changes. It just changes.
Certainly there are other challenges that may be big challenges that come along with the age, as the baby grows.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we have a couple of comments I just want to pipe in and say here. We're asking someone's asking us to comment a little bit on that baby and toddler face-to-face position by nature of size. And then we also have someone piping in, sort of talking about the child starts being more mobile and claiming more space. in the dog's eyes as well. So even though the now, instead of a baby being something you can kind of hang on to as the child starts to age, they start to become more mobile. And I think that also, that opportunity for face-to-face interactions
Absolutely.
get higher.
And this is where the management stations, success stations come into place. If you cannot supervise, if you're not actively 100% actively sitting there watching the child and the dog in the same room, you owe it to the dog, you owe it to the child to put the dog somewhere where it will not be a threat to the baby and where the baby will not appear to be a threat to the dog. So you would have, as I explained earlier, you should have tether trained your dog where you can put the dog over there. But that changes whenever the child can walk around or crawl around, right? So then it's preferable if a dog is behind a gate or in a safe place. It could be a crate in a room with a closed door, right? You need to up the safety according to the child's level of understanding and level of walking around, right? Mobility is what I meant to say.
So as we kind of move forward with age a little bit, sorry, Jay, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, you know what? I had a grandson. Well, I have a grandson, and
I've got 5, Jay. I've got 5.
Well, somebody's fertile, I guess. Good for them. I have a grandson, and when he came to the house, and look, I've got dogs that look, any dog can be potentially dangerous depending on proximity and where it is in the equation and the temperament of the dog and all that kind of fun stuff. I have a grandson, and when he was I don't know, he was newborn, like not days old, but I want to say like, I don't know, maybe a month or maybe 2.
So not crawling.
That was the first time that I had done any. That was the first time that probably that my dogs would have been around a child that young.
That smell, that sound, yeah.
The smell, the sound, the vibe, like that, the energy that baby puts off. I don't feel like dogs, unless they're socialized early to babies, really know how to deal with that
different little being.
It's not like it's not normal, but the vibe that the baby can put off can be very unsettling because the dogs just don't know that. They just
well,
have
on top
idea.
of that, Jay, the way people react when they have a baby like that, the humans act differently. We talk differently. We sound like, we look different when we're holding a baby like that. We really do. People's demeanor, humans' demeanor changes when they're physically in proximity to an infant. It's just you could see it.
So when I brought my grandson in, the baby never hit the floor. Period.
Well, you're talking about a 1-month-old. So
my dogs don't have a bite hit. Like they don't, not only do they not know babies that much, but my dogs are good. They're not looking to necessarily bite a human. And my grandson never hit the floor. I never let him down to crawl. And what I did do when I had my grandson in my arms and the dogs came over was I body blocked. I created space for me and for the baby. And right away I put in place, that's not the way you're going to approach.
Respect, yeah.
It's not going to happen. You can't. I know you're excited to see me, and maybe you're excited to see the baby because you're curious and you've never, like, this is all new, but you got to come in with a certain amount of I want to say respect, but respect, it's such an awfully used word, overused word, and it just carries so much negative connotation to it. I just want to say that the dog's just got to come in mindful, just very mindful about what it's doing, thoughtful about stuff, about how it's entering space. And if it doesn't, let's say if that dog comes in, I saw a couple of dogs in the video. Hey man, I'm sorry, but for me, and this may offend some people, is humans before dogs all day. That's just the way it is. And so I'm going to start putting boundaries around the dog. And not only, and I'm not coming at it from a place of, you can't, I'm coming at it from a place of, you know what, here's something you can do instead of. Mm-hmm. Which implies that I'm already beginning to teach the dog or reinforce some coping mechanisms that I've already put in place.
Well, and I think that's the key right there.
A newborn, a toddler, or otherwise, because it's so important that the dog just be respectful and mindful of space, whether it's an adult or a baby.
Mm-hmm. I agree, and you see different people different ways. With my grandchildren, they would come. And well, it depends. I have two little families here, so the approach was different to both, because one has a lot of contact with animals, just all sorts of animals, and the other little family doesn't. So the approach was quite different. But nonetheless, because they are used to being part of the activities that we do, I would sit on the ground with the child on me, and just like you, I would demand that calmness, that coming into the space in a very appropriate way. Yeah. Which I call, some form of respect. To me, it doesn't have a negative connotation, but we're not going to get stuck on, we're saying the same thing using different words. So they would come in and, then they would learn to come in very slowly, very calmly, and interact with the children. But on the other side too, if the child, when they get to be 2 or 3, or 2 more than 3, where they get really excited, and sometimes I don't know why, but they like to go to the dog and they like hitting the dog like that on the back, or playing with their ears or the tail. The tail's really funny. That's when I would educate too. I'd say, and I would over exaggerate my reaction. I would really over exaggerate if, let's say, they had done something where the dog's really reacting like this, let's say poke the eye, or tried to put their hands in the mouth, or pull some part of the dog, then I would really go, oh no, oh shay, like I would really over exaggerate, and they go, oh. And then afterwards I would lessen and lessen as I go. But you need to give them that initial sorry, but that's a live being. It has emotions, and you need to give that animal space without treating it like it's a nothing or a toy, right? So I feel that the education is both ways, and of course I would never have left them on their own ever, just as you were saying, ever. I mean, it's not something I would ever do, because you do need to protect them from each other, not because they're aggressive but the potential for danger is so high.
You're just talking about a baby going over and going, puppy, and pulling tails and stuff like that. That baby's not aggressive.
Oh no, exactly.
But that still might be perceived as aggressive towards the dog. The dog might perceive that as an aggressive act. So I think it's really
at the end of the day, dogs are predators, right? At the end of the day, dogs are predators. They are predators, and they use their teeth to communicate. So, words of wisdom for myself: it's educate yourself, educate on yourself on body language, educate yourself, because you see that eye twitch, you see that stale look, you see that head turning around. You jump in and you advocate for your dog.
Exactly.
And I'll say it on, because that's what I truly believe with my guys is respect. It really is. It's, you respect your space, you respect baby space, and how I look at it again, and going back to educating, as the video is playing, there's a lot of body language in that video that's up in the corner that's playing, that you can see some of this body language where the head's tilt and the eyes are still, and the dogs aren't appreciating that. So teaching your baby, and as they grow, teaching your baby to respect the same. Dog needs respect, baby needs respect.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think
that's
that
exactly what I say when I go into for the family dog program. I say to the child, my job here is to, because they look at me, why are you here? Like, what, they don't understand sometimes. And I say, well, I'm here to talk to you about how the dog communicates with you, and I'm also here to help the dog communicate well with you, because if you have a happy dog, then you are safe, right? So this is how I approach it, and it really is. That's exactly what it is. In simple terms, that's exactly what it is.
You know, Nicole, you have a statistic that through one of the programs that you use that I think is really important for people to hear. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. It's Stop the 77 that it's called. It was put in place by two ladies in the States. So this statistic is from the States, not here in Canada. And it's that 77% of bites happen to children, and it's usually a dog that they know. So which means it could be a grandmother's dog, a neighbor's dog. So it's usually by a dog that they are familiar with. So we have a lot of education to do, a lot of educating parents, children, and a lot of putting prevention in place, education, and managing the environment in order to protect the child and the dog both, and not seeing them as, oh, he's an aggressive dog, or that child is mean. They're not. They're simply who they are, and they need someone to guide them and watch over them.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, Nicole, because a lot of time people assume, again, and we're going backwards a little bit here, people assume again that their dog's automatically going to be good with their kid or with the baby, and that's not necessarily true, again, because the dog's not acclimated to the baby, to the smells, the cries, to all that kind of thing. But also on the flip side of that is, like, people just don't know that people might have a nasty dog. And suddenly they're bringing baby into the equation.
Absolutely.
And I can assure you, I don't take that lightly, because we've made some very difficult calls, because it was a very dangerous situation.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you have a happy dog, great. You have less chance of an accident happening, but that doesn't mean an accident won't happen.
Absolutely not. You're right.
It just won't. And if you have a nasty dog, your probability of something going wrong, if you don't set parameters, if you don't provide structure, if you don't set leadership, or have no leadership skills, or have no strong relational value with the dog, the probability goes very, very high, very, very quickly if you've got a dog who just doesn't like people in general.
Can I just say, overall,
this gets really tough. I mean, Tash and I do a lot of pot cakes, and that gets really, really tricky when we deal with pot cakes, because typically a pot cake typically has stranger danger with humans. And so you bring a dog who has genetic stranger danger, and, like, I mean, I don't want to get too far into the genetics, but you get a dog who has stranger danger, meaning it's not like my golden who walks and goes, "Hey, my name's Riley, here are you." It's like, yeah, you know what? I don't know who you are, and if you come closer, I'm probably not going to like it. And I could use my
not only stranger issues, but resource guarding.
Yes.
The whole other ball game there too. Is a resource guarding dog with a baby. Your management has to be so strong, and we all know that what is the failure rate of management? Well, pretty high, because it's the human that makes a mistake all the time. Somebody forgets the baby gate. Somebody forgets to lock the crate door. Somebody forgets the baby's out. Somebody goes to the bathroom for 5 seconds. Somebody does this for 5 seconds. And the next thing you know, in a nanosecond, we've got a baby with a problem. The other thing that we should probably maybe look at real quickly is, what not to let your dog or your baby do, because both bear a responsibility here, and that is, don't let your baby, your toddler, or your young child go up to the dog and stupid things, okay? That is ignorant. And I'm getting a little pissed about it because I see so many things. Like, just watching this video, it's infuriating.
Well, we're getting, so I want to say we're getting a lot of comments from people.
Let me finish. I got sent a video this afternoon by a friend, and they pictured a Malinois. And this adult girl, presumably in her early teens, was petting the dog, and the Malinois was already giving tons of warnings, and the mother didn't say anything as she video cameraed her daughter, who fortunately didn't get bit. But that dog was super patient, and that's a Mal. And they're very, very fortunate that the dog did mouth the kid. At what point I'm saying, well, when in the hell are you going to tell your kid to stop doing that? Mm-hmm. Because if that dog bites your kid, that's not a dog problem. That's a mom problem. Mm-hmm. Because you didn't teach your kid any damn better. So they're both bear responsibility. The dog has to be taught, but also parents need to advocate, or they need to lead their babies as well and teach them you can't just go willy-nilly. Just like the dog was prevented from coming into your space without permission, you can't allow the baby going to the dog space or the toddler going to the dog space without permission either. And then start doing all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, I think that's that's what we're getting at too.
You're
is that
asking for trouble? Parents don't let your children do that.
Yeah, I think that's what we're kind of looking at here, is that the mutual respect and responsibility for learning on both sides and both accounts. And you said it's a mom problem, it's a parent problem, it's a guardian problem. Somebody that's not the baby or the child or the dog has to be responsible for both parties. And I think we can all agree that adding a child into a household, or adding a dog into a child-full household, is next level for most dogs. It is the next level. So if you haven't achieved the first level, and now you're trying to go next level, well, we all know how that happens, right? How that works out. And so I think that that's super important. I just wanted to say that to comment with what you were saying, Jay. A lot of people are commenting on the stream also saying, the video really stresses me out to watch. And I'm actually happy to hear that. I'm really happy to hear that, because I think the intention of this video, and it got a ton of likes on YouTube, and I think the intention of the video was to be like, oh, look how cute this is. And I'm glad to hear that our viewers are looking at that and not seeing cute, but seeing a problem with leadership, because you can't get mad at that adorable baby or that dog who's trying incredibly hard.
No, exactly.
And so just those things that the dog can do. Tash, you were talking about some of those behaviors that you start to see early on. And we have like the four F's: fight, flight, fool around, and freeze, right? And I see it all in this video. I see a dog who tries to run away, and a baby that's chasing it. I see a dog who's trying to diffuse the situation by playing. I see dogs who are freezing, going, okay, I'll just stay really still and see if it goes away. And I see dogs in this video who are going, stop that, at low levels. Where does it go from there, right?
Just like I remember now, it brings up the English Bulldog, where the I'm assuming it's the parent, a man, is putting a child on the back of that poor bulldog. We know that bulldogs, their spines aren't the greatest, and the poor thing is seriously trying to get away, and then he does redirect a bite to the man's arm. I don't think he makes contact, but and the poor thing is talking so loudly, and again, the parent is just laughing, right? So it is a matter of education.
It is
education.
Is it fun for everybody? I think that's always the question. It's like, okay, I get it that you think this is really funny, and I get that you think the baby's being really cute, and I get the baby's having a great time. Is it fun for the dog?
Exactly.
Are you thinking about that?
Yeah.
So, and I, and
you know,
Or
sorry,
go ahead.
it just takes 1 second for things to go wrong.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
1 second. I tell
Yeah.
you something. When my son was born, my wife, well, my wife's not his mom, but and that because she would have never let this happen. We had at the time the person I was with, we had a husky from a husky or a Malamute, an older dog that we had before the baby was brought into the equation. And when the baby came into the equation, when he began to start on when my son started to crawl on the ground, I was at work, and my son started to crawl on the dog. And then I get a frantic phone call. The dog just bit the baby. Well, what happened? Well, the dog, he was crawling around and the dog just bit him. I'm like, no. What happened? Something went wrong, and the person was in the person was in the room, and it was just non-supervised. And what happened? Fortunately, Cody was not severely hurt, but he still to this day has a scar just right over here from a tooth. And it was from a warning from a dog. Why? Because that person allowed Cody to crawl over the dog and get on top and start doing all this kind of grabby stuff. And that dog's name was Kato. And Kato gave all kinds of warning signs that went unheeded. And he just took it into his own hands and said, look, man, let me be real unambiguous with you. I don't like what you're doing. And just, he grazed him and he cut him here and he had another something else. Now, I'm saying that because if people dearly love their dog as much as I want to hope they do, I can assure you it is not. I had a lot of dogs and I currently have 6. And I can assure you, it is not an easy thing to rehome your dog. Okay? So put the rules in place, set those parameters so you don't have to go through that trauma. If it is trauma, I hated every minute of it. Fortunately, I found a great home for the dog with another husky, and that was that. But, oftentimes that it's not an easy situation to navigate. When something goes wrong, because suddenly now you've got a dog who you have to ethically say, well, the dog bit the baby. And what are the chances of you rehoming a dog with a bite history on a baby? People need to think that stuff
you're
through.
You're building a resume for your dog. That, for sure.
So maybe Tash, can I ask you if you don't mind? How did you go about doing introducing? Because for you, it's it probably seems like yesterday.
Yeah.
How did you go about with Coda and Neptune, and maybe anybody else that was in the equation? Well, actually, you stopped before that. But how did you go about it with Nep and with Coda and Dex? How did that what did that look like lifetime?
Lifetime for me. And I was going to say, my words of wisdom is take your time. A lot of people presume that, I'm going to come home from the hospital, car seat's going to go on the ground, and dogs are going to run over and sniff the baby. My dogs did not see Dex probably until a week after he was actually here. He, touching base on noises and noises that they make and the squeaky noises, taking away the squeaky toys, that kind of stuff that can actually trigger that prey drive on the dog, taking away that kind of stuff, because the babies make that kind of noises, and if they make that squeaky noise, the dog's going to go, whoop, what's in there, right? And we are then targeting and diving into different types of drives that we don't want the dog to be in when the baby's around. So for me, and what I personally did was, I talked about it at the beginning, was the dynamics and routine changed. When Dex came home, Dex came home. It wasn't a big deal. Dogs, you're still down there. You don't have to rush the car seat. There's nothing going on. It is what it is. I really waited until they ignored, didn't show any sort of emotion towards the crying and the noises before I actually introduced. And when I introduced, it was, yeah, this is him. You can go lie down. You can go do your thing. It's not a big deal. I kept everything very much the same in terms of their, again, taking the excitement down, right? So where a lot of people might think or go wrong, in my opinion, is dogs have to be best friends with the baby. My mind, my dogs do not have to be best friends with my baby. They need to respect each other, and they need to, cohabitate together, right? And I find, again, in my opinion, that when people bring home their babies, it's babies are home. Dogs need to sniff the car seat. They need to be with them right away. They need to be checking in on them when they're crying at night. They need to be, around when things are happening, when they're feeding. And and for me, it was no. You guys can be in your dog room. Going back to changing in routine, you have to make sure that, if you feed and get up your dogs every day at 6 a.m., change that. Right? Because you might not get to them at 6 a.m. You might get to them at 9 a.m. after you've done feeding and changing and being with your baby. So you want to make sure that, they're not depending on you to have certain times and certain schedules. So it's, with my dogs, it was, we go out when we go out in the morning and they shifted, I guess, a bit, and, world didn't revolve around them in a sense that, if that makes sense. Did that answer your question, Jay?
Yeah, and you prepared them. Yeah. It sounds like you really did a lot of preparation. So, Nicole, we're getting close to sort of our end of time here. Is there anything specifically as a guest that you want to impart, any things that you want to leave with our audience as we play this last video for them, or maybe give a preface of what that is?
Yeah, I would say that your dog is learning whether you are training or not. Which means that if you are not paying attention and allowing your dog to do certain things, the dog is learning, and so is your child. So the onus really comes to the parent to take ownership of all of that, to guide and educate children, because dogs aren't monsters, babies aren't monsters. Together, it could be a huge catastrophe if it's not done properly. And Tash, hats off to you for doing it that way. You're doing it safely, you're doing it slowly, you're doing it at a good pace, which ensures that both are safe. And I salute the fact that you're giving your dogs a safe place to go to, and you decide when they go to that safe place, or you've given them the opportunity to choose to go to that safe place should they feel that it's necessary, right, for them. Because who knows best when they need a break for themselves? They know.
And they know, right? Based on that, when people start to really understand and know their dog, when they've had enough, right? Absolutely. So if I look over and I'm like, yeah, you guys are done, head back down to your room, go relax. You don't have to be
Exactly. So prevent, supervise, educate. Those are the big words in with a family of children and dogs. So and love them both for who they are.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on with us today, Nicole. I know it's a big topic, and we could probably talk for another hour about it. But I'm going to leave our audience with a video. Do you want to just explain where this video comes from before I play it, so they know?
Yeah, that was the video that was produced to convey the message within the Stop the 77 campaign that they did. And it's a video that starts off with, it's the same video that's played twice. So the first time, it's according to the child's perception. And I'm assuming the child's about 9, 10-ish years old or so. And then they back up the video really fast. They back it up fast, and then it's according to the dog's perception.
And Tash, you said you used this already in your work. Tash, when she saw the video, Tash said she had already used this, right, Tash?
Oh, good.
Yes, yeah, I have shared it.
Yeah. Good. So I'm going to play that video, so everybody can see it. And thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. It was great.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
We did everything together. I helped make his dinner. I always gave him his favorite treats. And I even taught him how to sit. And wow, the adventures we had. We were doctors, sailors, cowboys, and princesses. We had the most awesome times. Best friends forever. He was always there for me, and I loved him so much. I don't know what happened. Everything I knew had changed, and I was part of a whole new family now. But boy, she was fun, and I knew she'd loved me. So I let her hug me, lay on me, and pick me up, even though I really didn't like it. I did my best to be good, even when she put her hands in my food, and teased me with my bone, or made me do things I didn't want to. That swing was scary, so I held on tight. I tried to say I didn't want to be the patient, or the sailor, or the horse. I even asked the grown-ups for help, but nothing. I was saying it as loud as I could, but it was like no one could hear me. I kept telling her with my eyes, my face, my whole body. But she wasn't listening. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted to make it stop. And then it happened. And we never saw each other again.
77% of dog bites come from the family dog or a friend's dog. It's not for lack of love, it's for lack of understanding. And children are the most at risk. Together, it's a number we can change. So join us at stopthe77.com and learn the fun ways to teach your kids to stay safe around the dogs they love.